we are there for. It's going to be an interesting dramatized reading of some of the finest short stories by O. Henry and P.G. Wodehouse. So these two names definitely need no introductions. I'm going to have the audacity or the ability of trying to tell you who P.G. Wodehouse and O. Henry is. We have not one, not two, but they are. Who they are. That's really I was actually testing how alert people is. Like Ramendra, just because I can't see you doesn't mean you must stop me. Okay, so may I have the pleasure of inviting somebody or say a round of applause.
Being late, I've been wandering around for the last 35 minutes. Nobody knew where we were. Not where we is, but where we were. Now I know where we are. So I really apologize. I hate to be late. I've been wandering around for 30 minutes, but I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Also invite Lipi Goyal. And last but not the least, a round of applause to Ramendra Vasishth. He is the writer of a very, very exciting Hindi film that released last year. Everybody out here must have heard of Medicom. Yes. Ramendra is the writer of Medicom. Let me like it. Okay, I'm Cyrus Dastur, and it's a pleasure to be here. We're going to turn by turn read out excerpts from short stories from O. Henry and P.G. Wodehouse. We are.
Good evening, friends. I'm going to read out Pendulum by O. Henry. John walked slowly towards his flat. Slowly, because in the lexicon of his daily life, there was no such word as perhaps. There are no surprises awaiting a man who has been married 2 years and lives in a flat. Katie would meet him at the door with a kiss flavored with cold cream and butterscotch. He would remove his coat, sit upon the lounge, and read. In the evening paper of Russians and Japs slaughtered by the deadly linotype. For dinner, there would be pot roast, a salad flavored with a dressing warranted not to crack or injure the leather, and the bottle of strawberry marmalade, blushing at the certificate of chemical purity on its label. After dinner, Katie would show him the new patch in a crazy quill that the iceman had cut for her off the hand of his four-in hand. At 7:30, they would spread newspapers over the furniture to catch the pieces of plastering that fell when the fat man in the flat overhead began to take his physical culture exercises. John Perkins knew these things would happen, as he knew that at 8:15, he would summon his nerve and reach for his hat, and that his wife would deliver the speech in a querulous tone. Now, where are you going? I would like to know, John Perkins. Thought I would drop up to McCloskey's, he would answer, and play a game or two of pool with the fellows. Of late, such had been John Perkins' habit. At 10 or 11, he would return. Sometimes Katie would be asleep, sometimes waiting up. For these things, Cupid will have to answer when he stands at the bar of justice with his victims from the Frogmore flat. Tonight, John Perkins encountered a tremendous upheaval of the commonplace when he reached his door. No Katie was there, with her affectionate, confectionate kiss. The 3 rooms seemed in portentous disorder. All about lay her things in confusion. Shoes in the middle of the floor, curling tongs, hair bows, kimonos, powder box, jumbled together on dresser and chair. This was not Katie's way. With a sinking heart, John saw the comb with a curling cloud of a brown hair among its teeth. Some unusual hurry must have possessed her. Hanging very visibly to the gas jet by a string was a folded paper. John seized it. It was a note from his wife, running thus: Dear John, I just had a telegram saying mother is very sick. I'm going to take the 4:30 train. Brother Sam is going to meet me at the depot there. There is cold mutton in the ice box. Pay the milkman 60 cents. She had it bad last spring. Don't forget to write to the company about the gas meter, and your good socks are in the top drawer. I'll write tomorrow. Hastily, Katie. Never during their 2 years of matrimony had he and Katie been separated for a night. John read the note over and over. Here was a break in a routine that had never varied, and it left him dazed. He began to set the rooms tidy, as well as he could. When he touched her clothes, a thrill of something like terror went through him. He had never thought what existence would be without Katie. She had become so thoroughly annealed into his life that she was like the air he breathed, necessary but scarcely noticed. Now, without warning, she was gone, vanished, as completely absent as if she had never existed. John dragged the cold mutton from the icebox, made coffee, and sat down to a lonely meal, face to face with the strawberry marmalade's shameless certificate of purity. He did not care to smoke. Outside the city roared to him to come join in its dance of folly and pleasure. The night was his. There would be no wrathful Katie waiting for him. He might play pool at McCloskey's with his friends. John Perkins was not accustomed to analyzing his emotions. He knew now that Katie was necessary to his happiness. I am a double-dyed tub, mused John Perkins. The way I have been treating Katie, of every night playing pool and bumming with boys instead of staying home with her, a poor girl, here all alone, with nothing to amuse her, and me acting that way. John Perkins, you're the worst kind of a shine. I'm going to make it up for this little girl. I will take her out and let her see some amusements, and I'll cut out the McCloskey gang right from this minute. Tears. Yes, tears came into John Perkins' eyes. When she came back, things would be different. He would make up for all his neglect. What was life without her? The door opened. Katie walked in carrying a little hand satchel. John stared at her stupidly. My, I'm glad to get back, said Katie. Mom wasn't sick to amount to anything. Sam was at the depot and said she just had a little spell and got all right soon after the telegraph. So I took the next train back. I'm just dying for a cup of coffee. Nobody heard the click and the rattle of the cogwheels as the third floor front of the Frogmore flats passed its machinery back into the order of things. A band slipped, a spring was touched, the gear was adjusted, and the wheels revolved in their old orbit. John Perkins looked at the clock. It was 8:15. He reached for his hat and walked to the door. Now, where are you going? I would like to know, John Perkins, asked Katie in a querulous tone. Thought I would drop up to McCloskey's, said John, and play a game or two of pool with the fellows. Thank you.
Hello everybody. I'm a little unnerved because I'm a little nervous because my first reading ever in front of a crowd like this and sitting next to Tom sir. I could do with some words of encouragement from you all.
Yeah.
I was wondering which story to read because each and every story from ONV, everybody's read, most of us have read. So it's very difficult to figure out, to decide upon which story one should take up. Cyrus, very, how do I say, currently the most popular one, the last week. So I was kind of going through the book, which one should I take up? So I stumbled upon a story, a stranger stumbled upon a story called The Strange Story, which I read many years ago when I just bought the book. And here it goes. In the northern part of Boston, there once dwelt an honest family by the name of Smothers. The family consisted of John Smothers, his wife, himself, their little daughter, 5 years of age, and her parents, making 6 people towards the population of the city when counted for a special write-up, but only 3 for an actual one. One night after supper, the little girl was seized with a severe colic, and John Smothers hurried downtown to get some medicine. He never came back. The little girl recovered and in time grew up to womanhood. The mother grieved very much over her husband's disappearance, and it was nearly 3 months before she married again and moved to San Antonio. The little girl also married in time, and after a few years had rolled around. She also had a little girl, 5 years of age now. She still lived in the same house where they dwelt when her father had left and never returned. One night, by a remarkable coincidence, her little girl was taken with cramp colic on the anniversary of the disappearance of John's Smothers, who would now have been her grandfather if he had been alive and had a steady job. I'll go downtown and get some medicine for her, said John Smith, for this was the name of the man whom the girl had married. No, dear John, cried his wife. You too might disappear forever and then forget to come back. So John Smith did not go, and together they sat by the bedside of little Pansy. That was the little girl's name. After little Pansy seemed to grow worse, and John Smith, the father, again attempted to go for medicine, but once again his wife stopped him. Suddenly, the door opened. An old man, stooped and bent, with long white hair, entered the room. "Hello, here is Grandpa," said Pansy. She had recognized him even before the others could. The old man drew a bottle of medicine from his pocket and gave Pansy a spoonful. She got well immediately. "I was late," said John Smothers, "as I had to wait for the streetcars." That is the same story. I didn't make up there.
I'm sure Henry at least made it up. Okay, since Ramendra has already told you the story that I'm about to read, so it's no suspense. What I'm about to read is, I think, the works of Henry, P.G. Wodehouse, and great writers and authors like them. I think all of them are very fascinating, whether it's Fan Penguin or whether it's a Strange Story or the other one that you were talking about, Humorous Confession, or even the last Scene. I think one of the main reasons why most of us, practically all of us, have heard and know so much about The Last People, because there are a lot of films that have been made on this story. I'm guessing a lot of you might have heard of Lutera. That was one of the more recent versions that have been made. I'd just like to point out something interesting. There are lots of films, feature films or short films that are made on stories. But very few feature films have actually been made on short stories. A lot of films that you see, and in Hollywood, obviously, it's very common for people to adapt novels, whether it's classics, whether it's contemporary, etc. But very rarely, I'm not saying this is the only one, but very rarely have feature films actually been made out of short stories, and it's actually commendable that the kind of quality and the kind of content that Henry wrote many years back has actually stood the test of time, and so many films have been made. Another interesting point that I'd like to point out is that this is probably the only, or one of the only, sorry, not the only, but one of the only short stories on which films of all lengths have been made. You had short films, you had mini feature films, and you had full-length feature films. You had films as short as 5 minutes, you had films as long as 2.5 to 3 hours, and you had many feature films. In fact, I was in Ahmedabad and there was a Gujarati filmmaker who made a film in Gujarati on the last page. So that actually proves the kind of quality that actually generated so many years back. There is only another short story that immediately comes to my mind, which is actually led itself to making a short film, a TV series, and a feature film. Any guesses which book am I talking, which story am I talking about? I'll just give you a quick clue. The name of the author is Charlotte Perkins. If you guys follow literature, I don't think this should be very difficult for you. Sorry? Anybody say anything? Have you guys heard of the yellow wallpaper? Yeah, the yellow wallpaper. So yellow wallpaper is the only other story that I know of, which is actually also now. Serial last leaf. Okay, it's basically time.
Turning yellow, just see the
Okay, so it's about to start the last leaf. The whole pleasure of reading and recreating a story which we already know is sometimes very different. So here it is, a tribute to one of the greatest writers that we continue to cherish. In a little district west of Washington Square, the streets have run crazy and broken themselves into small strips called places. These places make strange angles and curves. One street crosses itself a time or two. An artist once discovered a valuable possibility in the street. Suppose a collector with a bill for paints, paper, and a canvas should, in traversing this route, suddenly meet himself coming back without a cent having been paid on account. So, to quaint old Greenwich village, the art people soon came prowling, hunting for north windows and 18th century gables, and Dutch antiques and lowrides. When they imported some pewter mugs and chafing dish or two from 6th Avenue and became a colony. At the top of a squatchy 3-story brick, Sue and Johnsy had their studio. Johnsy was familiar for Joanna. One was from Maine, the other was from California. They had met at the table d'hote of the 8th Street Delmonico's and found their tastes in art, chicory, salad, and bishop's meats so congenial that the joint duo resulted. That was in May. In November, a cold, unseen stranger, whom the doctors called pneumonia, stalked about the colony, touching one here and there with his icy fingers. Over on the east side, this ravager strode boldly, smiting his victims by scores, but his feet trod slowly through the maze of the narrow, moss-strewn places. Mr. Pneumonia was not what you could call a chivalric old gentleman. A mite of a little woman with blood thinned by Californian ciphers was hardly fair game for the red-fisted, short-breathed old duffer. But Johnsy he smote, and she lay, scarcely moving on her painted iron bedstead, looking through the small Dutch window panes at the blank side of the next brick house. One morning, the busy doctor invited Sue into the hallway with a shaggy grey eyebrow. She has 1 in a chance in, let us say 10, he said. I shut down the mercury in his clinical thermometer. And that chance is for her to want to live. This way, people have a lining you on the side of the undertaker that makes the entire pharmacopoeia look silly. Your little lady has made up her mind that she's not going to get well. Has she anything on her mind? She wanted to paint the Bay of Naples someday, said she. Paint? Bosh! Has she anything on her mind worth thinking twice? A man, for instance? A man, said Sue, with Jew's half twang in her voice. Is a man worth... But no, doctor, there is nothing of that kind. Well, that is the weakness then, said the doctor. I will do all that science so far as it may filter through my efforts can accomplish. But whenever my patient begins to count the carriages in the funeral procession, I subtract 50% from the curative power of medicines. If you will get her to ask one question about the new winter styles and cloak sleeves, I will promise you a 1 in a 5 chance for her instead of a 1 in a 10. After the doctor had left, Sue went into the workroom and cried a Japanese napkin to her wife. Then she swaggered into John C's room with a drawing board, whistling ragtime. John C. lay, scarcely making a ripple under the bedclothes with her face towards the window. Sue stood whistling, thinking she was asleep. She arranged her board and began a pen and ink drawing to illustrate a magazine story. Young artists must pave their way to art by drawing pictures for magazine stories that young authors like to pave their way to literature. As Sue was sketching, a pair of elegant horse-show, riding trousers and a monocle of the figure of the hero and an Idaho cowboy, she heard a low sound, several times repeated. She went quickly to the bedside. John C's eyes were open wide. She was looking out of the window and counting backward. 12, she said. And a little later, 11. And then 10, and 9, and then 8, and 7. Almost together. Sue looked solicitously out of the window. What was there to count? There was only a bare, dreary yard to be seen, and the blind side of the brick house 20 feet away. An old ivy vine, gnarled and decayed at the roots, climbed halfway up to the brick wall. The cold breath of the autumn has stricken its leaf from the vine until its skeleton branches clung, almost bare to the crumbling bricks. What is it, dear? Asked Sue. 6, said Johnson in almost a whisper. They're falling faster now. 3 days ago they were almost 100. It made my head ache to count them, but now it's easy. There goes another one. There are only 5 left now. 5 what, dear? Tell your story. Leaves on the ivy vine. But the last one falls. I must go to. I've known her for 3 days. Did the doctor tell you? Oh, I have never heard of such nonsense, complains with magnificent scorn. What are old ivy leaves to do with your getting well? And you used to love that wine, so you naughty girl, don't be goosey. Why the doctor told me this morning that your chances for getting well really soon? I mean, well, let's say exactly what did he say? He said that the chances were 10 to 1. Why, that's almost as good a chance as we have in New York when we ride on the streetcars or walk past a new building. Try to take some broth now and let Suri go back to her drawing room so she can sell the editor man with it and buy port wine for a sick child and pork chop for all the resell. You needn't get any more wine, said Johnson, keeping her eyes fixed out of the window. There goes another. No, I don't want any broth. I think it's just 4. I want to see the last one fall before it gets dark. Then I'll go too. Chauncey, dear, said Sue, bending over, will you promise me to keep your eyes closed and please not go out of the window until I'm done working? I must hand those drawings in by tomorrow. I need the light or I will draw the shade down. Couldn't you draw in another room? Asked Chauncey coldly. I'd rather be here by you, said Sue. Besides, I don't want you to keep looking at those silly ivy leaves. Tell me as soon as you've finished, said Johnson, closing her eyes and lying white and still as was fallen statue, because I want to see the last one fall. I'm tired of waiting. I'm tired of thinking. I want to turn loose my hold of everything and go sailing down, just like one of those poor tired leaves. Try to sleep, said Sue. I must call Bearman up to be my model for the old hermit miner. I'll not be gone a minute. Don't try to move till I come back.
The story is not over. We'll get back to Henry. Meanwhile, we're going to move on to P.G. Wodehouse He used to be a PG in Mumbai, that's how they got his name. He lived on Wodehouse Road, so that's what it's called. I'm sorry, very bad joke. Now, this story I'm going to read half and then get back to Henry in the last lead. This is a short story about a subject which almost everyone in India is very, very familiar with, that is cricket. But in this story, it's most amazing that there are some people who don't like cricket. Very interesting story called How's That, Umpire? The story of Conky Biddle's great love begins at about 6:45 on an evening in June in the Marylebone district of London. Now, who has heard of the MCC cricket team, aside from Cyrus? Have you heard of MCC? What does MCC stand for? Can anybody tell me? Say it once again. You got it. Marylebone Cricket Club, which is situated in London. He had spent the day at Lord's Cricket Ground watching a cricket match, and driving away at close of play had been held up in a traffic jam, just like leaving Wankhede Stadium at the end of a match. And held up alongside his taxi was a car with a girl at the wheel. And he had just lit a cigarette and was thinking of this and that when he heard her say, "Cricket is not a game. It is a mere shallow excuse for walking in your sleep." It was at this point that love wound its silken fetters about Conky. Don't forget, Conky is the hero of the story. His name is Conky Biddle. He leaped like a jumping bean and the cigarette fell from his nerveless fingers. If a girl who talked like that was not his dream girl, he didn't know a dream girl when he heard her. You couldn't exactly say that he fell in love at first sight, for owing to the fact that in between him and her, obscuring the visibility, there was sitting a robust blighter in blue flannel with a pinstripe, therefore he couldn't see her. All he had to go on was her voice. But that was apt. It was a charming voice with an American intonation. She was probably, he thought, an American angel who had stepped down from heaven for a short breather in London. "If I see another cricket game 5,000 years from now," she said, "that will be soon enough." Her companion plainly disapproved of these cracks. He said in a sniffy sort of way that she had not seen cricket at its best that afternoon, play having been greatly interfered with by rain. "A merciful dispensation," said the girl. "Cricket with hardly any cricket going on is a lot better than cricket where the nuisance persists uninterrupted. In my opinion, the ideal contest would be one where it rained all day and the rival team stayed home doing their crossword puzzles." The traffic jam then broke up and the car shot forward like a B-29, leaving the taxi nowhere. Now don't forget, who was sitting in the taxi? Conky Biddle, the hero of our story. The reason why this girl's words had made so deep an impression on the young Biddle was that of all things in existence, with the possible exception of slugs and his uncle Everard, Lord Plumpton, he disliked cricket most. As a boy, he had been compelled to play it, and grown to man's estate, he was compelled to watch it. And if there was one spectacle that saddened him more than any other in a world where the man of sensibility is always being saddened by spectacles, it was that of human beings, the heirs of the age, waddling about in pads and shouting, "How's that, umpire?" He had to watch cricket because Lord Plumpton told him to, and he was dependent on the other for his 3 squares a day, that is, his 3 square meals a day. Now, Lord Plumpton was a man who knew the batting averages of every first-class cricketer back to the days when they used to play in top hats and whiskers and recited them to Conky after dinner. Now, all of us know people like this. I bored the life out of my son by doing exactly the same thing, and he ended up as a cricket correspondent. He's now on the way to Australia to write about the World Cup. So, If you get old men reciting cricket averages to you that Gavaskar averaged less than Sachin Tendulkar, listen very closely, even if you're entirely bored, because in the end, those statistics might just come in. And that's me, not P.G. Wodehouse. He liked to show Conky with the assistance of an apple, or in winter of an orange, how Bodger of Kent, or you can say Shastri of Bombay, got the finger spin which enabled him to make the ball dip and turn late on a sticky wicket. And frequently when Conky was walking along the street with him and walking up to touching him for a tenner, he would break off the conversation at its most crucial point in order to demonstrate with his umbrella how Cotter of Sussex, or perhaps Sethi of Maharashtra, made his late cut through the slips. Now, you've all seen many an old man walking along Marine Drive and suddenly going, that doesn't mean he's mad. He's just demonstrating to his grandson how to play a late cut or a hook. It was to the home of this outstanding louse, where he had a small bedroom on an upper floor, that Conky was now on his way. Arriving at Journey's End, he found a good deal of stir and bustle going on, with doctors coming downstairs with black bags and parlour maids going upstairs with basins of gruel, and learned from the butler that Lord Plumpton had sprained his ankle. No, really, said Conky, well pleased, for if his uncle had possessed as many ankles as a centipede, he would thoroughly have approved of him spraining them all. I suppose I'd better go up and view the remains. The remains. He proceeded to the star bedroom and found his uncle propped up with pillows, throwing gruel at the parlour maid. It was plain that he was in no elfin mood. He was looking like a mass murderer, though his face lacked the genial expression which you often see in mass murderers, and he glared at Conky with a sort of wild regret which sweeps over an irritable man when he sees a loved one approaching his sickbed and realizes that he has used up all the gruel. What ho, Uncle Everard, said Conky. The story going the rounds of the clubs is that you have bust a joint of sorts. What happened? Lord Plumpton scowled darkly. He now looked like a mass murderer whose stomach ulcers are paining him. I'll tell you what happened. You remember I had to leave you at Lord's to attend a committee meeting at my club. Well, as I was walking back from the club, there were some children playing cricket on the street, and one of them skied the ball towards extra cover, so naturally I ran out from the road to catch it. I judged it to a nicety and just caught it when a homicidal lunatic of a girl came blinding along at 90 miles an hour in a car and knocked me base over apex. One of these days, said Lord Plumpton, licking his lips, I hope to meet that girl again, preferably down a dark alley. I shall skin her very slowly with a blunt knife, dip her in boiling oil, sever her limb from limb, assemble those limbs on the pavement, and dance upon them. And rightly, said Conky. These girls who bust your ankles and prevent you going to Lord's tomorrow need a sharp lesson. What do you mean, prevent me from going to Lord's tomorrow? Do you think a mere sprained ankle will stop me going to a cricket match? I shall be there with you at my side, and now, said Lord Plumpton, wearying of these exchanges, go to hell! Well, Conky did not go to hell, but he went downstairs and out onto the front steps to get a breath of air. He was feeling low and depressed. He had been so certain that he would be able to get tomorrow off. He had turned to go in again when he heard a noise of brakes as a car drew up behind him. Excuse me, said a voice. Could I see Lord Plumpton? Simple words. But the effect on Conky as he recognized that silvery voice was to make him quiver from stay-combed hair to shoe sole. He uttered a winning cry, which, as he circled around and for the first time was privileged to see her face, became a gasp. The voice had been the voice of an angel. The face measured up to the voice. Seeing him too, she too gasped. This was apt to be the reaction of the other sex on first beholding Conky Biddle. For though his IQ was low, his outer crust was rather sensational. He was indeed a dazzlingly good-looking young man who out-carried Grant and began where Gregory Peck left off. And now back to O. Henry, and then we shall return to P.G. Wodehouse if he pays his rent for the next month.
I'll not be gone a minute. Don't try to move till I come back. Old Behrman was a painter who lived on the ground floor beneath me. He was past 60 and Michelangelo's Moses beard curling down from the head of his satyr, along with the body of an imp. Behrman was a failure in art. 40 years he had wielded the brush without getting near enough to touch the hem of his mistress's robe. He had always been about to paint a masterpiece, but never yet begun it. For several years, he had painted nothing except now and then a dog in the line of commerce or advertising. He earned a little by serving as a model to those young artists in the colony who could not pay the price of a professional. He drank gin to excess and still talked of his coming masterpiece. For the rest, he was a fierce little old man who scoffed terribly at the softness in anyone and who regarded himself as especially master in waiting to protect the two young artists in the studio above. So you found Behrman smelling strongly of juniper berries in his dimly lit den below. In one corner was a black canvas on an easel that had been waiting there for 25 years to receive the first line of the masterpiece. She told him of Johnson's fancy and how she feared she would indeed light and fragile as a leaf herself float away when her slight hold upon the world grew weaker. Old Behrman, with his red eyes plainly streaming, shouted his contempt and derision for such idiotic imaginings. "Was," he cried, "is there people in their world in their foolishness to die because leaves take the drop off from a confounded wine? I have not heard of such a thing. No, I will not pose as a model for your fool hermit dunderhead. Why do you allow such dog silly pussiness to come in their prayer of her? Ah, that poor little Miss Yonsey. She's very ill and weak," said Sue. "Fever has left her mind morbid and full of strange fancies." "Very well, Mr. Behrman. If you do not care to pose for me, you needn't. I think you are a horrid old flibberty gibbet. You are just like a woman," yelled Behrman. "Who said I will not pose? Go on, I come with you. For half an hour I have been trying to say that I am ready to pose. God, this is not any place in which one so good as Miss Yonsey shall lie sick. Someday I will paint the masterpiece and we shall go all away. God, yes, I will." Yonsey was sleeping when they went upstairs. Sue pulled the shade down to the windowsill and motioned Behrman into the other room. In there, they peered out the window fearfully at the ivy vine. Then they looked at each other for a moment without speaking. A persistent cold rain was falling, mingled with snow. Behrman, in his old blue shirt, took a seat at a hermit minor on an upturned kettle for a rock. When Sue awoke from an hour's sleep the next morning, she found Chauncey with dull, white, open eyes staring at the drawn windshield. "Put it up, I want to see," she ordered in a whisper. Wearily, Sue obeyed. But no, after the beating rain and fierce gusts of wind that had endured through the long night, they yet stood out against the brick wall one ivy leaf. It was the last one on the vine, still dark, green near its stem, with its serrated edges tipped with the yellow of dissolution and decay. It hung bravely from the branch some 20 feet above the ground. "It is the last one," said Chauncey. "I thought it would surely fall during the night. I heard the wind. It will fall today. I shall die at the same time." "Dear, dear," said Sue, laying her worn face down on the pillow. "Think of me if you won't think of yourself. What would I do without you?" Chauncey did not answer. The lonesomest thing in all the world is a soul when it is making ready to go on its mysterious far journey. The fancy seemed to possess her more strongly as one by one the ties that bounded her to friendship and to earth were loosed. The day wore away, and even through the twilight, they could see the lone ivy leaf clinging to its stem against the wall. And then, with the coming of the night, the north wind was again loosed, while the rain still beat against the windows and pattered down from the low thatched leaves. When it was light enough, Chauncey, the merciless, commanded that the shade be raised. I believe was still there. Chauncey lay for a long time looking at it, and then she called to Sue, who was stirring her chicken broth over the gas stove. "I've been a bad girl, sweetie," said Chauncey. "Something has made that last leaf stay there to show me how wicked I have been. It is a sin to want to die. You may bring me a little broth now and some milk with a little pot in it, and no, bring me a hand mirror first, and then pack some pillows about me, and I will sit up and watch you cook." An hour later, she said, "Sudi, someday I hope to paint the way of peoples." The doctor came in the afternoon, and Sue had an excuse to go into the hallway as he did. "Even chances," said the doctor, taking Sue's thin, shaking hand in his. "With good nursing, you will. And now I must see another case I have downstairs. Bearman. Bearman, his name is. Some kind of an artist, I believe. Pneumonia too. He's an old, weak man, and the attack is acute. There is no hope for him. He goes to the hospital today to be made more comfortable." The next day, the doctor came and told Sue, "She's out of danger. You won. Nutrition and care now. That's all." And that afternoon, Sue came to the bed where Chauncey lay, and gently knitting a very blue and very useless woolen shoulder scarf, and put one arm around her pillows and all. "I have something to tell you, White Mouse," she said. "Mr. Bearman died of pneumonia today in the hospital. He was ill only 2 days. The janitor found him in the morning of the first day in his room downstairs, helpless with pain. His shoes and clothing were wet through an icy cold. They couldn't imagine where he had been on such a dreadful night. And then they found a lantern, still lighted, and a ladder that had been dragged from its place, and some scattered brushes, and a palette with green and yellow colors mixed on it. And look out of the window there, at the last ivy leaf on the wall. Did you wonder why it never fluttered or moved when the wind blew? Ah, darling. It's Bearman's masterpiece. He painted it there the night that last leaf fell.
The night the last leaf fell. Wow. Now we get back to Conky the Drew. And he just heard the beautiful voice of that American woman who didn't like cricket, and he's absolutely delighted. Now, his description was, he was indeed a dazzlingly good-looking young man, just like Cyrus, who out-carried Grant and began where Gregory Peck left off. So for people under the age of 50, Cary Grant and Gregory Peck may not have the meaning as as they do for us, but they are two of the handsomest stars of the Hollywood films of the 40s and 50s. I say, he said, going to the car and placing a foot on the running board, don't look now, but did I by chance hear you expressing a wish to meet my uncle, Lord Plumpton? That's right. I recently flattened him out with my car and I was going to give him some flowers. I wouldn't, said Conky. I really wouldn't. I say this as a friend. Time the great hero will have to pull up its socks and spit on its hands quite a bit before it becomes safe for you to enter the presence. I see. Then I'll take the blooms around the corner and then delivered by a messenger boy. How's that, umpire? Conky winced. It was as though he had heard this divine creature sully her lips with something out of a modern historical novel. Good God, he said. Where did you pick up that obscene expression? Well, from your uncle. He was chanting it at the top of his voice when I rammed him. A mental case, I imagine. Oh, what does it mean? It's what you say at cricket. Cricket? The girl shuddered strongly. Should I tell you what I think of cricket? I've already heard your views. Your car got stuck abaft my taxi in a traffic block this evening, and I was here, if you follow what I mean, and you were there a few feet to the northeast, and so I was able to drink in what you were saying about cricket. Would you mind if I thanked you with tears in my eyes? Not at all. But don't you like cricket? I thought all Englishmen loved it. Not this Englishman. It gives me the pip. What in the world the pip is, I don't know, but it doesn't sound very nice. Me too. I ought never to have gone near that Lord's place, but in a moment of weakness, I let myself be talked into it by my fiancée. Conky reeled. Oh, my Satan, Have you got a fiancée? Not now. Conky stopped reading. Was he the bloke you were talking to in the car? That's right. Eustace Davenport Sims. I think he plays for Essex or Sussex or somewhere. My views were too subversive for him, so after kidding back and forth for a while, we decided to cancel the order for the wedding cake. I thought he seemed a bit sniffy. Well, he got sniffier. Very sensible of you not to marry a cricketer. So I felt. The upshot then was that when all the smoke is blown away is that you are once more in circulation. Yes. Well, that's fine, said Corky. A sudden thought struck him. I say, would you object if I pressed your little hand? Some other time, I think. Any time that suits you. You see, I have to hie me back to my hotel and dress. I'm late already, and my father screams like a famished hyena if he's kept waiting for his rations. And with a rapid thrust of her shapely foot, she set the machinery in motion and vanished around the corner on two wheels, leaving Conky staring after her with a growing feeling of desolation. He had just realized that he was unaware of her name, address, and telephone number, and had had what was probably his last glimpse of her. If the expression ships that pass in the night had been familiar to him, he would certainly have uttered it using clenched teeth for the purpose. It was a Conky with heart bowed down and a general feeling of having been passed through the ringer who accompanied his uncle to Lord's next morning. The thought that a grade-A soulmate had come into his life and buzzed out again, leaving no clue to her identity or whereabouts, was a singularly bitter one. Lord Plumpton, on the journey to the Mecca of cricket, spoke well and easily of the visit of the Australian team of 1921, but Conky proved a distrait listener. So distrait that Lord Plumpton prodded him irascibly in the ribs and called him an infernal goggle-eyed fathead, which of course he was. He was still in a sort of trance when they took their seats in the pavilion, but here it was less noticeable. Everybody else was in a sort of trance. The somnambulists out in the field tottered to and fro, and the spectators lay back and let their eyes go glassy. For perhaps an hour nothing happened except that Hodger of Middlesex, waking like Abu Ben Adam from a deep dream of peace, flicked his bat at a rising ball and etched it in the hands of a sleeper dozing what is technically known as the gully. Then Lord Plumpton, who had been silent except for an occasional Nice, sat up with a sudden jerk and an explosion. Well, I'm dashed! And glared sideways at the 3 shilling seats which adjoined the pavilion. And Conky, following his gaze, felt his heart execute 4 separate back and wing steps and came to rest quibbling like a jelly in a high wind. Well, I'm dashed, said Lord Plumpton, continuing to direct at the 3 shilling seats the kind of look usually associated with human fiends in mystery stories. There's that blasted girl! It was not a description which Conky himself would have applied to the divinest of her sex, nor one which he enjoyed having applied to when for a moment he was in 2 minds as to whether to haul off and sock his relative on the beezer. Wiser counsels prevailed, and he said, yes, there she spouts. Lord Plumpton seemed surprised. You know her? Just slightly. She ran into me last night. Into you too? Good God, the female's a public menace. If she's allowed to remain at large, the population of London will be decimated. I have a good mind to go over and tell her what I think of her. But your uncle, what the devil are you gibbering about? I mean your ankle, uncle. You mustn't walk about on it. How would it be if I popped over and acquainted her with your displeasure? Lord Plumpton considered. Yes, that's not a bad idea. A surprisingly good idea, in fact, considering what a nitwit you are. But pitch it strong. Oh, I will, said Conky. He rose and hurried off, and Lord Plumpton fell into conversation with a barely animate spectator on his left. They were soon deep in an argument as to whether it was that square leg or extra cover that DCL Water of Gloucestershire had fielded in 1904. If the girl had looked like the better class of angel in the uncertain light of last night, she looked more than ever so in the reasonably bright sunshine of today. She was one of those lissom girls of medium height. Her eyes and hair were a browny hazel, the general effect of a seraph who ate gloss in the east. Oh, hello, said Conky, lowering himself in the seat beside her. We meet again, what? She seemed surprised and startled in her manner as she gazed at his clean-cut face and then into his frank blue eyes. There was something that might almost be described as fluttering. You, she cried, what are you doing here? Oh, just watching the cricket. But you told me last night that cricket gave you the pip, which I imagine is something roughly equivalent to the megrims or the heebie-jeebies. Quite, but you see, it's like this. My uncle is crazy about the ghastly game, and I'm dependent on him. So when he says, come along and watch cricket, I have to come along and watch it like a lynx. The girl frowned. It was as if she had been hurt and disappointed. Why are you dependent on your uncle? Why don't you get a job? Conky hastened to defend himself. I do get a job. I get dozens of jobs, but I lose them all. The trouble is, you see, that I'm not very bright. No, not very. That's why they call me Conky. Do they call me Conky? Invariably, what started was an observation one of the masters of the school happened to drop one day. He said to me, to attempt to drive information into your head riddle is no easy task, for Providence, mysterious in its workings, is given you instead of the more customary human brain, a skull full of concrete. So after that, everyone called me Conky. I see. What sort of jobs have you tried? Practically everything except Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, and you get fired every time. I'm sorry. It's dashed white of you to be sorry, but as a matter of fact, it's all right. How do you mean it's all right? Conky hesitated. Then he reflected that if you couldn't confide in an angel in human shape, who could you confide in? He glanced about him. Except for themselves, the 3 shilling tier of seats was almost empty. Well, you'll keep it under your hat, won't you? Because it's supposed to be very hush-hush at the moment. I am on the eve of making a stupendous fortune. You know sea water? The stuff that props the ship up when you come over from New York? That's right. Well, you probably aren't aware of it, but it's full of gold. And I'm in with a fellow who happens to be a Parsi who's got a secret process for scooping it out. I saw his advertisement in the paper saying that if you dashed along and brassed up quick, you could get in on an invention of vast possibilities. So I dashed along and brassed up. He was a nice chap for a Parsi and let me into the thing without a murmur. Bloke of the name of Dastur. I happen to have scraped up 10 quid, so I put that in, and he tells me that as a conservative estimate, I shall get back about 250,000. I call that a nice profit. Very nice. Yes, it's all very convenient. And when I say that, I'm not thinking so much of the jolliness of having all that splotch in the old sock. I'm alluding more to the difference. This is made in what you might call my matrimonial plans. If I want to get married, I mean, what I'm grabbing is giving her a melting look. Can you give me a melting look? Not bad. Is that I am now in a position when I meet a girl I love to put the binge on a practical basis. So I see. In fact, said Cocky, as you get closer, I might almost start making my plans at once. That's the spirit. Father's slogan is do it now, and he's a tycoon. I thought a tycoon was a sort of storm. No, a millionaire. Is your father a millionaire? Yes, and more pouring in all the time. Oh, a sudden chill had come over Conky's dashing mood. The one thing he had always vowed he would never do was marry for money. That's why you waited so long? For years, his 6 uncles and 7 aunts have been urging him to cash in on his looks and grab something opulent. They had paraded heiresses before him in droves, but he had been firm. He had his principles. Of course, in the present case, it was different. He loved this girl with every fiber of his being. But all the same, no, he told himself, better wait till his bank balance was actually bulging. With a strong effort, he changed the conversation. Well, as I was saying, he said, I hope to clean up shortly on an impressive scale, and when I do, I'll never watch another cricket match as long as I live. Arising from which, what on earth are you doing here, holding the views on cricket which you do? A slight shadow of disappointment seemed to pass over the girl's face. It was as if she had been expecting the talk to develop along different lines. I came for a purpose. Hey, what purpose? She directed his attention to the rows of living corpses in the pavilion. Lord Plumpton and his friend, having settled the water question, were leaning back with their hats over their eyes. It was difficult to realize that life still animated those rigid limbs. When I was here yesterday, I was greatly struck by the spectacle of those sticks over there. I wondered if it was possible to stir them up with some sort of activity. I doubt it. Well, I'm a little dubious myself. They're like fish on a slab or a Wednesday matinee audience. Still, I thought I would try. Yesterday, of course, I had elastic and ammo with me. Elastic. Ammo? Conky stared. From the recesses of her costume, she had produced a piece of stout elastic and a wad of tin foil. She placed the tin foil on the elastic and then between her teeth. Then turning, she took careful aim at Lord Plumpton. For a sighting shot, it was an admirable effort. Conky, following the projectile with a rapt gaze, saw his uncle start and put a hand to his ear. There seemed little reason to doubt that he had caught it amidships. Good Lord, he cried. Here, after you that elastic, I should have done at school, and how many was the fine had I secured? I wonder if the old skill still lingers. It was some minutes later that Lord Plumpton turned to the friend beside him. Wasps very plentiful this year, he said. The friend blinked drowsily. What? Wasps? There was a A.R.K. Watts who used to play for Sussex. Ark, we used to call it, not Watts, wasps. Wasps? Wasps. What about them? They seem very plentiful. One stung me in the ear just now, and now one of them was knocked off my hat. Most extraordinary. A man in a walrus mustache who had played for Surrey in 1911 came along, and Lord Plumpton greeted him cordially. Hello, Freddie. Hello. Good game. Very exciting. Wasps are a nuisance, though. Wasps. Wasps. What wasps? I don't know their names. The wasps around here. No wasps around here. Yes. Not in the pavilion at Lord. You can't get it unless you're a member. Well, one has just knocked off my hat. And look, there goes Jimmy's hat. The walrus shook his head. He stooped and picked up a piece of tin foil. Someone's shooting this stuff at you. Used to do it myself a long time ago. Ah, yes, he said, peering about him. I see where the stuff's coming from. That girl over there in the 3-shilling seats with your nephew. If you look closely, you see she's drawing a bead on you right now. Lord Plumpton looked startled and stiffened. That girl again? Is one to be beset by her through all eternity? Send for the attendants, arouse the attendants and give them their divisional orders. Instruct the attendants to arrest her immediately and bring her to the committee room. And so it came about that just as Conky was adjusting the elastic to his lips, a short while later, preparing to loose off, a heavy hand fell on his shoulder, and there was a stern-faced man in the uniform of an MCC attendant. And simultaneously, another heavy hand fell on the girl's shoulder, and there was another stern-faced man in the uniform of another MCC attendant. It was a fair cop. The committee room of the Marylebone Cricket Club is a somber and impressive apartment. Photographs of bygone cricketers, many of them with long beards, many of them Parsis, gaze down from the walls, accusingly, or so it seems to the man whose conscience is not as clear as it might be. Only a man with an exceptionally clear conscience can enter this holy of holies without feeling that he is about to be stripped of his MCC tie and formally ticketed as a social leper, in spite of being a Parsi. This is particularly so when, as in the present instance, the president himself is seated at his desk. It was at Lord Plumpton's request that he was there now, and it seemed to Lord Plumpton that a case of this magnitude could be dealt with adequately only at the very highest levels. He mentioned this in his opening speech for the prosecution. I demand, said Lord Plumpton, the most exemplary punishment for an outrage unparalleled in the annals of the MCC, the dear old club we all love so, if you know what I mean. Here he paused as if intending to bare his head, but realizing that he had not got his hat on, continued. I mean to say, and they're taking pot shots at members with a series of slabs of tinfoil, dash it. If that isn't a nice bit of box fruit, what is? Bad enough, you see what I'm driving at, to take pot shots at even the canaille, as they call them in France, who squash in the pre-season. But when it comes to pot-shotting members of the pavilion, I mean, where are we? Personally, I would advocate skinning the girl, but if you consider that too extreme, I prefer to serve her for 20 years in solitary confinement. A menace to the community, that's what this girl is, busting about in a car and knocking people deadways with one hand, flicking their hats off with the other, if you follow my drift. She reminds me of, who was the woman in the Bible whose work was always so raw? Delilah? No, it's on the tip of my tongue. Ah, yes, Jezebel. She's a modern, streamlined Jezebel, dasher in size. Uncle Everard, said Conky, you're speaking of the woman I love. The girl gave it a gasp. No, really, absolutely, said Conky. I had intended to mention it earlier. I don't know your name. Clarissa Binsted. How many S's? 3 if you count the Binsted. Clarissa, I love you. Will you be my wife? Sure, said the girl. I was hoping you'd suggest it, and what all the fuss is about is more than I can understand. Why, when we go to a ball game in America, we throw pop bottles. There was silence. Are you an American, madam? Said the president. 100%. Oh, say, can you see? Oh, see, can you see? No, I never remember how it goes after that. I could whistle it for you. The president had drawn Lord Plumpton aside. His face was grave and anxious. My dear Everard, he said in an urgent undertone, we must proceed carefully here, very carefully. I had no notion this girl was American. Someone should have informed me. The last thing we want is an international incident, particularly at the moment when we're hoping, if all goes well, to get into America's ribs for a bit of the stuff. I can fully appreciate your wounded feelings. And what about my wounded papa? The club will buy you a new hat, and then, my dear fellow, I would strongly urge that consider the matter closed. You mean not skin her? No. Not slap her into the cooler for 20 years? No. There might be very unfortunate repercussions. Oh, all right, said Lord Plumpton suddenly. Oh, very well, but he was seated in the right tone. There is one thing I can do, and that is disinherit this frightful object here. Oh, he said to Conky. Hello, said Conky. You are no longer a nephew of mine. Well, that's a bit of a goose, said Conky. As he came out of the committee room, he was informed by an attendant that a gentleman wished to speak to him on the telephone. Excusing himself to Clarissa and bidding her wait for him downstairs, Conky went to the instrument, listened for a few moments, then reeled away, his eyes bulging and his jaw drooped. He found Clarissa at the spot agreed upon. Hello there, said Conky. I say, you remember me asking you to be my wife? Yes. You said you would. Yes. Well, the words that spring to the lips are, will you? Because I'm afraid the whole thing is off. That was Dastur on the phone. He said he'd made a miscalculation and my tenor won't be enough to start the seawater scheme going. He said he would need another 30,000 pounds and could I raise it? I said no, and he said, too bad, too bad. And I asked, do I get my tenor back? And he said, no, you don't get your tenor back. I'm a Parsi. So there you are. I can't marry you. I don't see it. Father's got it in gobs. He will provide. Not for me, he won't. I always swore I'd never marry a girl for money. You aren't marrying me for my money. You're marrying me because we're soulmates. That's true. Still, you appear to have a most ghastly lot of stuff, and I happen to be. But suppose you had a job. Oh, if I had a job, that's all right. Then father runs a gigantic business, and he can always find room for another vice president. Vice president? Yes, but I don't know enough to be a vice president. It's practically impossible not to know enough to be a vice president. All you would have to do would be to attend conferences and say yes whenever father made a suggestion. What? In front of a whole lot of people? Well, at least you could nod. Oh yes, I could nod. Then that settled. Kiss me. Their lips met long and lingering. Conky came out of the clinch with sparkling eyes and a heightened color. He raised a hand to the heaven. How's that, umpire? He cried. A jolly good show, sir, said Clarissa.
Thank you for being such a lovely audience. In fact, it's the first day of the Kalagoda Art Festival 2015. If I'm not mistaken, I think this is also one of the first theatre acts for the Kalagoda Festival. So we're absolutely delighted to be a part of the opening act and the opening evening. And it's been a pleasure being a part of this festival for many, many years now, for me at least. And well, it's just keep coming back again and again. So a round of applause to all our friends that we started reading Lipi, Goyal, Ramendra, Vasishth, PG Wodehouse itself.
I'm sure none of you guessed that PG Wodehouse didn't actually say Parsi. I'm sure none of you guessed that.
Everybody did.
Really? Everybody guessed it? Oh, everybody guessed it. Oh, you're rather bright for a Parsi. I've been working with Cyrus for almost 13, 14 years now, and I realized that making fun of him is possible only because, yes, Parsis are very handsome, very bright, very witty, very good with other people's money, not so good with their own. And PG Wodehouse, I'm sure he met Parsis. He would have loved the Parsis, and I know that Parsis love PG Wodehouse. So thank you for being a fantastic audience. Enjoy Kalagoda Festival. And every year it gets better and better and better, just like our lovely city. Thank you very much.